Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about how do you onboard yourself to the cloud providers like AWS, Azure and Google Cloud Platform. In this video, I'll focus specifically on Azure, but the same thing will hold true for AWS and Google Cloud Platform. Now, since I'm going to talk about Azure, it is important for me to make full disclosure that I am employee of Microsoft. Now, let's quickly get started. If we see any of the cloud provider, there are three verticals or three categories of services provided by the cloud providers. The first is that you can get a virtual machine from the cloud provider, just like the machine you have, just like the laptop which I have with me. So you get a machine and you get a public IP on that machine, and then you get an operating system. So that operating system can be either Linux or Windows. So when you have a OS with you, you can install whatever you want to. And once you install, since you have a public IP, people can access your machine using the public IP. So that's a very classical way, and that's how the cloud system initially started. That hey, all the cloud providers are going to give you a VM, and now since you have the VM, you can install the software. If you need database, you install the database in that VM. If you need, let's say, a Java program to be running, then you can install Java. Likewise, you can install anything you want to, and you own the whole VM as such. So you are responsible for lots of things. So if you have a database, you don't want to lose the data in the database, right? So you would need to constantly take the backup. That responsibility is on you. Likewise, if there is a security patch of any OS which has come, so it is your responsibility to take up the security patch. So that's the first category. Now what I'll do is that I'll also show you how things look like. So for that, I have Azure with me, and this is how the Azure looks like. You can go to portal.azure.com and sign up for yourself. Now, when you go to this Azure portal, you can create some resources. So for example, you can click on create resources and you can create a new virtual machine. Now, if you have virtual machine, you can do lots of things. So let's create a virtual machine by clicking on create, and then we can choose a resource group. I mean, you can, create a new, it doesn't really matter, whatever you want, you can create here. And you can give a machine name like Python 3.4, whatever you want to. Leave the availability zone to whatever it is. And then you choose the cheapest image which is possible. The size is the cheapest one, around 500 rupees per month, and you can use basic auth or SSH based auth. And yeah, you can use a username and password, and let's give a username and let's give a password. And then you need to allow some inbound ports, so you allow one inbound port. And yeah, you keep the things as default, whatever they are. You allow one of the inbound ports. You would also need to allow the HTTP port if you are going to serve the HTTP request. And then just keep on clicking next, and it will create the virtual machine for you. So a bunch of things you need to do in the UI. And once you do that, the pricing is there for you. You can just click on create and it will create a virtual machine for you. Very simple. Once this is done, when you click on create, since I have already done that, I am not going to click create here. So once you do that, you will be able to see the virtual machine in your dashboard. So you can click on the virtual machine, and then you can get the public IP of that virtual machine. That hey, what's my public IP? Now when you get the public IP, you have already configured the username and password. What you can do is that you can go to a terminal, and then I could do SSH, and I can actually log into that machine. So I am actually present in this machine now, and in this machine I created a root folder which has one file, as you can see here. So I can create a web server using Python command. You can use some other command if you want to, or if you want to use Java, etc. So I'm serving this folder on the port 8000, and I know the IP address of my machine. So what I can do is that I can go to the particular IP address :port, and then I can access the files in that particular machine. It's just like a regular, you can even install Tomcat, you can run the Python server, and you can access basically your virtual machine. So if you install database, you might as well access the database in your machine. So it's very simple to do that. You get a VM and then you can install things on your own. The biggest disadvantage of this approach is that now you are responsible for whatever goes wrong in this machine. So let's say, let me close this terminal. Let's say somehow you miss monitoring that if the service is down or not, or the process gets killed. So you have to monitor on your own. You also need to monitor any patch or any update which comes into this Linux machine. So the machine on which I have done the SSH. So that is also your responsibility. So there is a lot of responsibility for you in the simple virtual machine setup. So that's why this is one of the options, but there are other options as well. So we'll talk about the second option, which is there. So the first one you might have got, that you can actually go to the Azure portal, create a VM, and then you get the public IP. You can SSH to that IP. You can install whatever software you want to, and then you can access the endpoints from the browser or however you want to. So that's the first approach. But as we understood, there are some disadvantages, and some people might not be okay with those disadvantages. So for that, there is a second option. And what's the second option? Second option is called as the app service. So app service is a simpler version of the virtual machine. So here again, there will be a virtual machine, but that will not be something which will be owned by you. As in, it is not something which you have to maintain by yourself. There is somebody else who would be maintaining it for you. So it's a sort of a hybrid stuff where if you are using Azure, then Azure will be maintaining the machine for you. And all you need to do is to give some configurations to that machine. So, and then it will run things for you. So for example, if you want to run a Java program, you have a Java application and you want to deploy it on Azure because you want it to be accessible to everyone. So what you can do is that you can give the GitHub link of your application, and then what will happen is that all the updates and all those things will be maintained by Azure itself. So let's see how that works to understand it further. So for that, I have Azure portal here, and what I wish to do is that I need to deploy my Java code to Azure. So I have a code in my GitHub, and now I wish to deploy this particular code into the Azure. That's the overall ask. So one approach we already discussed. Now in the second approach, what we'll do is that we'll click on create a resource, and this time instead of creating a virtual machine, we'll click on create a web app. So we'll click on this create button, and then here what we'll do is that we'll choose the resource whatever we want to. We'll name it Anubhav demo. Let's see, and then we want to deploy the code. We want to deploy, let's say, the Java 11 stuff, and then the embedded web server. It can be Linux, we don't care. And then let's choose the cheapest pricing again. So let's use the one with the free one. And what we can do is that let's go to the next page, or let's choose Windows and see what are the options available here. Let's choose the free one. Then we'll go to the deployment and we'll click on continuous deployment. So basically you get CI/CD by yourself. And now what we need to do is we need to deploy the Spring Boot CRUD. So here I'll choose my GitHub link here, and then the repository will be Spring Boot CRUD. We'll use the master branch, and then we'll click on networking. So enable public access, we are enabling it, and then next, and here after the validation is done, we'll click on the deployment. You can see the validation is done, and then we'll just click on create. And once we click on the create, we just have to wait for the deployment. So let's wait a bit and then move to the dashboard to see if the deployment is done. So it took some time for the app to get deployed, but now since it's deployed, let's go to the resource and see the deployment status. So we can now in the UI itself go and see the deployment status, that the app is actually deployed and I can actually access the app using a URL. So remember, I just gave the GitHub link, and Azure took care of everything, that whenever a commit would happen in that Git repo, then the deployment will automatically trigger. I could actually click and open the particular link. So since it's a Spring Boot application, and actual URL should have been /swagger/index.html. So let's do that here. So if we do that, we would be able to open the same Spring Boot application, which we would be running on local using this local host. So we just gave the GitHub link to this Azure, and then it was able to deploy it successfully on cloud. So we can access the things here, and you see there are things and features like scale up, scale out. There are multiple things which can be directly controlled from the Azure itself. So I'm using the free one, but if I need more power in my machines, I can just change things from the UI itself. So lots of things are directly supported from the portal itself, and that just makes the life much more easier. So that's the second one, which is you just give a GitHub link and Azure will take care of everything, the deployment and the security and updates and all those things. Now I'll talk about the third one. The third one is the ready to use services. So these services do not even need deployment from your end. So they are just provided as API from Azure. So you just go to the Azure portal and create for yourself. So let me just go to the Azure portal and show it. So one of the services is called as Azure Content Moderation. So for that, you just need to go to Azure portal, go to home and create a new resource. And then here you can just search for content moderation. So, and these are the services provided by Azure Marketplace. So you can just create a content moderator. I have already created one. So for example, let's say you have a reviews and rating service and you don't want that somebody abuses each other, or somebody does not post adult content or the racial slurs. So how do you control that? So for that, there is a service already provided by Azure. You just have to call their endpoints and the APIs. So for example, here I have the keys and the endpoints. So I'll just copy the key, and then you can just go to the one of the UIs and paste the keys. Let me just paste the key here. I'll paste the stuffs here. You can even use Postman, but since this is already provided by them, I'll just use it. And then I'll call the send method with all the subscription key and all those stuffs. And let's see the output. What's the output which will be sent? So you can see the adult classifier and the racy classifier, which is sent by Azure directly. So if you see the image which is being passed, so you can copy the image and you can give any other image you want to, and Azure Cognitive Service will actually give you the particular image. So let's copy and paste it. So this is the image which is being sent to Azure, but it can be any other image, and you just give an image URL and Azure Cognitive Service will tell you whether this image is racial or does it has adult content and all those stuffs. So that can help you really, right? If you have a service or the platforms in which you do not want such content. So likewise, there are other services as well. So these are the major three buckets overall which I wish to talk about. One was of course the bare virtual machine. You are the master of your machine. You do whatever you want. The second was the app service, in which what you had to do was to give the GitHub URL, and then Azure was taking care of the stuffs. And the third was the ready to use services like Azure Cognitive Services. So you get the endpoints and you can call the endpoint however you want to. So that's the overall idea. These are the three buckets which I wish to talk about, and I hope all the three buckets you were able to see and observe the things in Azure portal. And I would suggest that there are multiple other features here, and I can keep on talking about all those features. But just to summarize, I would suggest you to go through the portal and create the resources. Once you create the resources, you will have more idea that what are the different features available and what all things you can do as a ready-made solutions given by these cloud providers. And many of them are free. So, they are as cheap as ₹0. You just have to enter the details and then you can proceed. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. Please do try these cloud platforms. They give lots of ready-made things to you. that makes the lives of the developers very easy. That's it from my side. Till the next time. Bye.